Muchas gracias, Siri. Muchas gracias a INCIBE por invitarnos.
Hello, good morning to everyone. Thank you very much to INCIBE for having invited us to take part one more year in Cybercamp. We decided to prepare a presentation targeted at all publics, okay? However, I do not promise anything, okay? Last year, also wanted to do exactly the same thing. However, my wife and my daughter were in the audience and they told me that they didn't get anything, all right, from my presentation. We will be here for 30 minutes. So we will tell you, first of all, who we are, what we do, and I also would like to tell you how why we are in the cyberspace. Okay, so we have the Lieutenant Colonel. He is the head of the Department of Cooperation of the Joint Command of Cyber Defense of the Armed Forces, and I am the head of the operations. So what do army people what do army people do at the cyberspace? Well, for a long time, men have been in combat, in war, for centuries. We have improved our arms capacity, tactics. We introduced firearms, chariots of combat, that is to say, more and more sophisticated elements up until today. And the situation right now, as it shows on the screen. So all that has had an impact on the doctrine of war, strategy, tactics, etc. The same has happened in the second domains where the wars have been waged, which is the sea, which is my domain. In the last 40 centuries, sea has been evolving, so we started off with rowing boats, then sailing boats. Then that was followed by gas propulsion, blinded vessels. Techniques and technologies helped review all the concepts for naval war. The same happened in the air. Still, we had to wait until 19th century to have forces. In the beginning, that started with aerostatic globes, balloons. Later on, in the 20th century, we got aircraft, armed aircraft and planes, and at that time, all the concepts of the war were kind of rethought and reapproached. Now, in the 20th century, we have the space, another domain for war. So in the first decade of the 20th century, the most powerful nations want to increase the power, their control, and then they also acquired capacities to neutralize as much as possible the capacities of the enemy. And now, at the start of the 21st century, we have the cyberspace, which is a setting, a domain, which is not at all related to the previous settings. It has different characteristics where combats are completely different from before, and where everything that happens in there permeates and has a very strong influence on the other 4 domains. And what is specific and special about the cyberspace domain? Well, first and foremost, this is a nearly infinite domain. It is artificial but nearly infinite. It is a domain where the boundaries and the limits are little defined and very blurred. So the techniques and the weapons that are being used are specific for that domain and only. If in the sea the air and land, all the planes and the vehicles are in the power of the armed forces. In the cyberspace, all those weapons, cyber weapons, are scattered, meaning that anyone could have a cyber weapon and a very powerful weapon. And then this time we also have a wide range of actors. We do not only have the military, but we have many people that have the potential to cause damage. Very complex legal environment. This is so in the civil world. However, it becomes even more complicated when we try to apply war law to the war that is waged in the cyberspace. So we are still starting in working on that regard. This is a domain that has an impact on every single activity of governments. So just you can think about traffic, communication, transportation, energy supply. Everything is nowadays based on the cyberspace and supporting in the cyberspace. And the greatest conceptual change of all that is that for the first time ever in the history of war, the heart of a nation is exposed and it is in the first line of combat. So from the cyberspace, you can move right away, you can access right away to that heart. And actually, rather than going beyond or using the cyberspace as one more war domain, well, sociologically speaking or psychologically speaking, we are living in two biospheres simultaneously. We have a physical one that we have clearly identified with rivers, boundaries, frontiers. We know where our enemy is, and where traditionally armed forces have been combating, neutralizing the enemy just to enforce the will. So as rational beings, we also live in a logical biosphere. We live in the worlds of reason, the worlds of ideas, and we've been also playing in that field through icons, paintings, with movies, films. So we've been building our mindset based on what we learn from TV series, films, etc. This is also a way of combat nowadays. And actually, in the cyberspace, nearly all of you are concerned about data, about numbers. That is to say, data that could be stolen from you, data that you can manage and deal with. But we also have ideas and letters in the cyberspace. Let us see what the Islamic State is currently doing now. They are using the cyberspace to manipulate ideas, to disseminate their ideas, to spread them. We are not talking about numbers only, economy only. They are also doing or waging a cyber war. And here we have also ideas around, and this is as important or even more important than what that happens with numbers. And actually the traditional layers of cyberspace. Okay, we have the physical layer that we've been acting on all the time, and we can also act on the infrastructure, but as of the fifth layer, everything becomes fully artificial. So when we act on the sea or on the air, we know the physical laws we are subject to. In the cyberspace, we do not only have those physical laws, but to the laws that we have defined when we build the infrastructure of those layers. So this time, we are more and more less Joe and Joe, and we are Joe and Joe at whatever. So we are more and more our avatars. Our avatars are increasingly more real, and because even in the way we interact with each other, Cyberspace is changing, okay? Now we are shaping groups. We socialize more based on our interests. We are not subjected to consistency and to the tyranny of consistency. So we have to understand all that from the cyber defense, not only to understand the risks and threats of cyberspace, but also to understand the opportunities that cyberspace offers. So we says that we combat in cyberspace. And what are the targets here? Well, we are not talking about combat units, we are not talking about vessels or planes or military bases. So here we are fighting for information, for delaying it or from taking away from the enemy. So we are also fighting the systems that support the exchange of that information. And we can also fight people. People are one of the most vulnerable points, as we will clearly see throughout these days. So what are the threats in the cyberspace? What are the military threats in the cyberspace? Well, actually, they are exactly the same ones that we have in our daily lives. So on the screen, you would not spot any term you are not familiarized with. I'm sure that you are very much used to them. You know them from cybercrime, from hacking, from whatever. All of them are techniques used by the military and that our enemies used against us. However, these techniques are also used by cyber hackers and cyber crimers. Therefore, we are using the same tools. And taking advantage of what? Well, taking advantage of the wide range of vulnerabilities related to information systems and to the actual information. Well, these vulnerabilities start being physical, starting off by flaws in design or by tampering, which is an ill-intentioned manipulation on the part of users. So we've seen tampering in well-known brands, that is to say issues regarding programming, design, protocols, applications, and then also vulnerabilities associated to the blame of the user. So perhaps due to lack of awareness or because the user of the system is our actual enemy. So there are very recent cases that we have heard in the armed forces in the US, such as what happened with the Mani soldier. And we have very many physical and logical vulnerabilities that our enemies can tap against us and that we can tap against our enemy. And how do we classify the offensive operations in cyberspace? Well, starting off from the most simple for the less intrusive, we starting off with digital intelligence, that is to say obtention of information about the enemy that will help us move forward. The next step is infiltration, that is to say penetrating the system of the enemy. There is a wide range of techniques. Well, one of the most typical ones could be phishing or using an infected pen drive. Then from there, we move on to the next stage, which is infection. Infecting a system that would allow us to carry out the attack. Cyber attack aimed at achieving denial of service, altering data. If we alter data at a larger scale, it may result in significant physical damage and could also result in physical destruction. And another very important technique is leaking of information, that is to say, hidden channels to extract sensitive, classified, confidential information that might be interested in getting to fight my enemy. And here, at this stage, we should give some context as to the role that we play in our joint command. So we are the equivalent of INCIBE in the world of industry and the Ministry of Interior. However, we are in the Ministry of Defense. We are one of the 3 governmental CERTs that we have here in Spain, and we are very glad to be here with you to show for the first time the video about our joint commands that has been edited by the Spanish TV and which is available on the internet. This is a 3.5-minute video. Well, it shows what we do and how we do it.
Estamos monitorizando un posible problema de desconexión de una de nuestras centrales fuera del país.
En el Mando Conjunto de Ciberdefensa tienen una misión permanente: que nadie a golpe de teclado pueda amenazarnos. Estas son algunas de sus operaciones y sus protagonistas. Controladas y eliminadas las ciberamenazas.
La reunión en la que acabamos de estar es el punto de situación. Los responsables de cada una de las áreas del Mando Conjunto de Ciberdefensa informamos a nuestro general de la situación, cómo ha ido evolucionando en las últimas 24 horas. La misión del Mando es la protección de las redes informáticas del Ministerio de Defensa. Podría parecer que el Ministerio de Defensa es muy pequeño, pero es que además tenemos en cada destacamento, en cada barco, tenemos que controlar también las comunicaciones. Una intrusión en un barco o en un destacamento en Afganistán, en Gabón, en Mali, es una intrusión en el sistema. Y a través de una penetración en los ordenadores de esas ubicaciones podrían llegar a las del Ministerio de Defensa y a las del resto de los usuarios. En el ciberespacio lo primero que tienes que tener es una imagen, el mapa de tus redes y saber dónde tienes los problemas en cada momento para poder solucionarlos, incluso antes de que haya ningún ataque. En este mundo tienes que estar siempre un paso por delante de tus adversarios. España, como país industrializado que es, estamos entre los países más atacados. En un momento dado se podría llegar a atacar una central energética una vez que han entrado dentro del sistema.
Una parte importante de nuestra formación consiste en participar en ejercicios nacionales e internacionales. El LogShield, que lo organiza el Centro de Excelencia de Estonia, plantean una serie de redes y de sistemas que tenemos que defender frente a ataques exteriores, y el Cyber Coalition, que es un ejercicio que organiza la OTAN, que es más puramente militar. En ciberespacio no estamos solos y los ataques que afectan a las redes militares también pueden afectar a los sistemas que son propiamente civiles.
Los ingenieros civiles que estamos en el Mando fundamentalmente apoyamos a las Fuerzas Armadas en la defensa contra acciones ofensivas en el ciberespacio. Asesoramos, diseñamos redes. Una persona desde su casa, sin muchos conocimientos técnicos, podría emprender actuaciones ofensivas para intentar explotar y acceder a los sistemas.
Hay una tensión constante. Cada ataque del que tienes noticia es distinto de los anteriores e implica un montón de gente innovando en este terreno.
La dedicación y el compromiso con la defensa de nuestra nación.
Exige una preparación continua y cada día supone un reto nuevo.
Hola.
Well, I hope that you liked the video. If you have any questions, we will be very happy to take them. And what about an APT, that is to say a complex attack? Attacks that we have to face very frequently, and well, perhaps they are the most sophisticated and complex attacks nowadays. So let us explain that in a simple manner. So we can be victims of those type of attacks, or we could be the attackers. So more often than not, it starts with the introduction of a malicious file through any of the connections or systems in place. The most typical way to do it is to do it through email or through in social engineering, that is to say phishing, or just USB, an infected USB. Therefore, the intranet of an organization is accessed through a number of techniques that will not dwell onto. So you can do like an escalation of privilege, just to obtain the privileges as administrator of the system, to get more and more information and to extract information, extracting the topology of the red, extracting vulnerabilities that are given back to the attacker. The attacker then gets the command and control of the system from a remote location. Then specific tools are designed to attack a specific system. So we have a SCADA system trying to recreate what happens with the centrifuge for uranium enrichment in Iran. So eventually the software associated with the SCADA system was tampered, was altered in a manner that where control systems were being sent out saying that the system was okay, was perfectly all right, which was not the truth. And therefore the centrifuge increased the reps per minute, and there was no control as to about that speed, and they ended up being destroyed. So through the various interconnections between systems, virtually there are no isolated systems. So therefore it's very likely to have a cascade effect, a chain effect that could have an effect on other critical infrastructures of a region, nation, or a state. As I mentioned before, critical infrastructures such as energy, etc. And well, potentially chaos could be caused in nations. Especially vulnerable are those nations that are technologically advanced, but also nations that have not fully developed their defense capacity. And we are amongst one of those nations. So we are not at the spearhead. We are not one of the first nations that trust the most on the cyber defense that they have, but we are working really hard to correct that, to change that. And how important is the Joint Command of Cyber Defense for the national defense? Well, we are a quite small group and very young in age. We are only 2 years of age. Well, our Joint Command, okay, our group is young, but we are not as young, okay? We are very young as a unit. Of course, military cyber defense was not born with us. We have just gotten the baton from other units, from other people before us that worked in cyber defense before. So we have brought together all those capacities to work and to operate not only at home, but also outside Spain. The importance of the Cyber Defense Command for the Ministry of Defense is very well illustrated if we were to think about the following. The Ministry of Defense has 3 permanent missions. One of it being the surveillance of our territorial waters, surveillance against piracy, to prevent humanitarian problems with illegal or legal migration. Second, we have aerial or our air defense. Okay, so we have a number of planes ready to attack whenever needed. And the third permanent mission, which works 24/7, is defense of the cyberspace. And this is the mission of the Joint Cyber Defense Command. So we are one of the main permanent missions of the Ministry of Defense and one of the basic pillars of the permanent defense that is being made for Spain. And we are the only country in the world today that considers cyber defense as a component command. Whenever there is an operation, whenever there is any problem, whenever an operation is planned, then the land command gets together to provide its capacity. The same goes for the sea, special operations, as well as the Joint Cyber Defense Command. So cyber defense, as well as the capacities that we have in the cyberspace, are taken into account for any operation that is planned, both to defend the national territory or for operations that we carry out abroad, and that we, for instance, for our vessels in the high seas. Well, these are the capacities that we have and that we are developing. We have capacities of defense, exploitation, and response. Defense is a preventive defense. We want to anticipate events. As we heard on the video, as we saw in the video, you want to be a step ahead of your enemy to prevent attacks, a proactive defense, a non-static defense. You cannot really, we have to do both. We have to defend ourselves, and we also need to be ready to come out of our castle and to fight our enemy if needed. For that, we need to find out what is out there to interact, and we need a capacity to support the rest of the military forces in the operations by using the resources available at the cyberspace. Our field of operation, scope of operation, is the whole world. As Enrique mentioned before, this is no longer a fight between two states, between two combat aircrafts. Now we have company, individual citizens, lobbying groups, terrorists that are also having an impact on the defense on the national interests. And therefore, within our mission, we have the defense of all that and to prevent any type of intrusion. And that has made it one of the characteristics of the cyberspace, as we mentioned before. So a wide range of actors involved. And for that, we designed a Center for Command and Control of Cyber Defense. In that center that we are which is kind of brand new. So it looks like in the films, okay? We have a planning room, operations room, and from there we are monitoring the networks of the Ministry of Defense. And from there we are doing real-time monitoring of all the networks. We are talking about multiple networks. We are not talking about national scope. We are working with NATO, with the European Union, with other allies. We have different networks with different degrees of classification, so the information that is being transferred is highly sensitive. Here we are not risking, or we are not playing with the money of the taxpayer, but with the lives of people. So therefore we have developed a team to centralize all that information and to direct all these operations in cooperation with our allies and by coordinating the actions of the land forces, the armed forces, with their respective capacities.
And the cyberspace cooperation is a must. We have it clear We are a founding member of the Center of Excellence in Cooperation and Cyber Defense in the NATO in Estonia. We have a remarkable presence there. We work with the European Union, NATO, with cyber defense agencies in the European Union. We're working currently with our allies in a very intense way. Here in Spain, we co-work with the National Spanish Institute of Cybersecurity, the Law Enforcement Group's Critical Protections Institute in Spain. We collaborate with national industry as well. We collaborate with universities by developing programs and syllabuses as to training people and students in a better way. And due to the current necessity of talent within this market, we need the extra cooperation. But there is an actor missing. We have to work with a lot. This missing and lacking actor is yourself, you. Each and every of yourselves, the individual citizen, the specific citizen, because if the attackers and enemies can be whatever outside, we want that our friends and cooperative people have to be yourself. We live it this way. This is the great message. Thank you for the great opportunity to share in this moment with you. We are open to a round of questions should you be interested in raise them. Thank you very much.
A ver, habéis dicho que...
You said that you count on us. We are the protagonists. We citizens are your allies. Are we citizens protecting us to sharing and collaborating with the army forces? Regarding the organic law to data protection, is this what you mean? Regarding sharing information, at this moment in time, there's specific formulas of cooperation between the Joint Cyber Defense Command of Armed Forces and the citizens. These formulas are limited. We are now studying the possibility of counting individually on people. We are doing it either through this platform in the army, working with civil engineers, or we have started as well with some students working with us. We are figuring out the right formula to get a fluid flow of information. We should integrate the capabilities from individuals within the Joint Defense Command of the Armed Forces, not only regarding the rules and standards, but also the permissions and to work within the cyber defense environment and to manage critical information dealt with the military. This is a current project going on, but there are the right standards and cooperation formulas as such. We are working on that. Good morning. I would like to know if we are now on a 4th level of defense. Do you have a fluid relationship with the autonomous region police force? Because we are living through a delicate moment. There are terrorists threatening us. What are you doing regarding this? Of course, there are some mechanisms which are triggered and are activated as the alert levels grow and grow more and more. Cooperation among the law enforcement groups and the armed forces is contemplated through some plans which develop this idea that as the alert level grows and goes up, the greater and the major the cooperation of the armed forces is with the rest of the law enforcement groups. At this moment, level 4, at this moment, the law enforcement group, the Autonomous National Police and the Guardian Shield are responsible for defending us for the terrorists. At this moment, we are working out with, the military, we're working with the law enforcement groups, the cyberspace units from the police, the civil guard, autonomous police groups are now doing this, but we're cooperating with them. As you know, now in the autonomous region of Catalonia, there is a strong influence of Islamists. There are a lot of Islamic in Catalonia. At this moment in time, we only have an alert level number 4 in Catalonia. There are some mechanisms of coordination at a government level. In principle, the Ministry of Defense does not have the direct correspondence and competency of having conversations with autonomous regions and local municipalities. This is done through one of a specific channel 3. There is a connection between the military and the autonomous region polices, but we are now supporting. We only give support. We don't take the lead. We don't have the leadership now because it's level 4. My name is Ismail. I devoted to the trading and merchandise security. I'm now working on this field subject matter you are presenting to us. In 2007, we had a case. We directly report to the Interpol. We had sensitive information supported on a database and document. There are some links and linkages which were very dangerous. So our clients and customers sent out some documents in 2007. And so I reported to Interpol. The very first object to be investigated, we were ourselves as a company. So there's a barrier. I don't know how to jump over this fence barrier. If this dossier is negative, how am I going to inform, report to the law enforcement groups? What is the vehicle or the tool you are offering from a state-based perspective to the companies and industries? Cooperations with the law enforcement groups, and especially as of the protection data law, is within the legal framework and is very restricted for several aspects. At any case, our relationship with the citizen is normally through the channel of the CERT, C-E-R-T, in charge of the relationship with citizenships, which is the Center of Cybersecurity. The Center of Cybersecurity should be able to answer to these legal and criminal questions. The differentiation between National Institute of Cybersecurity and the armed forces would be the same applicable between the civil and penal and criminal law and the international law on the other side. The criminal law and civil law are a competency of the cyber industry. Now I'm working on the mercantile and trading area, but we are on the same path. It has to be clear for all of us that our big commitment to us is to protect the Ministry of Defense networks and systems. The ground military do not protect the jewelers on the street Serrano, so we do not protect mercantile or commercial issues. There are other organizations to do so. Is of course the European NIS directive and guidelines obliges to us that when you have incidents in your organization affecting your clients and customers, you have to report it to the authorities. That was the point. There is like a duty of assisting others from a civil viewpoint. You have the obligation, the duty to give assistance. So you also have the duty of reporting information, which sometimes can mean the collapse of your own company, by the way, especially if it's a cybersecurity company and your keys had been stolen from all your customers and clients. It's a bad thing for your own reputation as a business person, entrepreneur. Good morning. When you are responding to an attack, the legislation framework, I take for granted that you only respond to military incidents. But what is the legal framework to respond? Are you from Galicia? Are you Galician? Almost, I'm a Galician person, by the way. Normally speaking, 93% of the incidents we respond are of military subject matter. Our commitment is to protect the networks and systems in the military, as well as those that can be given to us because they affect to the national defense. So we have like a tentacle in this octopus that can open the possibility of executing actions regarding systems that are not literally, essentially of military nation, but we solve incidents affecting our own military networks. As it happens in many organizations, most of the cases are false positives or incidents triggered from the bad use on behalf of the users, bad awareness, bad practices, rather than exterior attacks per se. Did I answer you? In any case, I'd like to clarify that the very same standard regulating the Joint Cyber Defense Command of Armed Forces obliges to conduct opportune, proportion, and legitimate actions. As in other scopes, we need to stick to the legal current standard, internationally speaking. My question was more specific. Do you want to respond to a physical incident and you have to ask for permission from the NATO to initiate a military external action? In this case, in cyber but offensive outside Spain, how did you manage this? This is a tricky question. We should have given you 1,500-page answer, depending on the situation you are. By the way, it's not the same that the right you exert or the law regulating belligerent conflict, peaceful situation, a crisis situation, sometimes an attack from an IP towards or against properties of the Ministry of Defense demands that I have to hand up the mobile phone and have to report this to the civil guards, the national police, or have to report it at court in front of the judges. In case of conflicts, we deal this with different process, with other plans, with forecast plans that triggered a series of actions in accordance with some given patterns studied by us. So it depends on many things. We, military, don't have to ask necessary permission from the NATO to conduct an action. The response has to be opportune, legitimate, and proportion. There has to be a temporary relationship between the attack and what my response is. There are so many ways to respond to an attack. So this has to be legitimate. It has to be in accordance with the current law at the moment. It can be the law of conflicting battles, or, for instance, legislation affecting one single country. The hacker can be in a country, the server in a different country, and so on and so on and forth. Lastly, the response has to be proportion, measure. There has to be a relationship between the size of damages given by the potential attack and my answer to counteract. This is the fair play in use now. Hello, Alberto Hernandez. I'm the operations director from the National Institute of Cybersecurity regarding incidents and attacks within civilians and private companies. The Center of Industry is operated by the Ministry of the Home Office and the Ministry of Industry that helps us in case of incidents within the civilian and citizens scopes or targeting companies. There is free toll phone number through the cyber internet user that can report all incidents affecting people, children, common citizens, and the private sector. Once you have reported the fact that in my company we got this problem, we receive it, we delve into that. If there is a crime behind, a criminal organization acting behind, we report it to the law enforcement group. In fact, we work very, very closely to them. We have police agents in the National Institute of Cybersecurity and given a rapid response. As of today, We had managed in Spain over 43,000 cybersecurity incidents among citizens, small size, medium size, big companies, and critical cyber infrastructures. Fraud against our families when we buy things on the internet where our banking credentials are stolen, but also attacks against companies or citizens. So here, when there is the citizens and the private scope, you have the third of cybersecurity industry. If it's affecting other networks, and we have to report it to the Home Office or the Interior Minister, we have a close linkage with the Minister of Interior and the police agents. Did I answer? Did I clarify your point? Thank you. Thank you, Alberto. I have to say that Alberto, who is now a whole person, a big, prominent person in the cybersecurity environment, he was working with the military back in time 2 years. He was one of the best assets we got there back in time, 2 years ago. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time. We're talking about vulnerabilities, menaces, threats in the cyberspace. Oh, it's so scary, so spooky to me. Are we well protected? I'm not afraid. I'm scared of switching on the laptop, the mobile phone, likely nuclear power stations. Are we ready for so many threats as of today? We are ready today, but tomorrow we are going to still be ready. We need to study in the future for tomorrow because they evolve so quickly that we need to catch up with the rhythm of technologies, the attacking techniques, to be ready. To take the lead, we have to take clear that 100% security does not exist, never will exist, but never in this environment. The issue is that as of today, we had our likelihood of adversaries, enemies, but now in the comfortness of our living room with the sneakers on the couch, we can be within the reach of our enemies and attackers. Yes, we are ready for that, but we need to be ready for the future, for tomorrow. It's important for us to use this forum to raise awareness of each and every of us regarding the vulnerabilities that we have for ourselves, for our environment, for our friends, and for the organizations and companies we're working for. Thank you very much. A big round of applause to our military. Thank you.